All right, so we have a couple different clips that we can play with. Let's look at some things we can do to the note events that are inside of the clip. I'm going to press E on my keyboard so I can go to the note editor. And here are notes that are inside of this clip. We notice in the inspector panel, I don't see anything specific, so I have to click on something so I have a context to look at. All right. So again, quick reminder, clips are containers. They're containers for events. This is a note clip, so I have a bunch of note events. And when I select a specific event, the inspector shows me things about that specific event. Now, as I'm looking in the editor, let's go ahead and make this a little bit taller. All right. And since we're going to focus on the notes, let's go ahead and just look at the full screen editor. I can either hit edit here, or I can hold shift and press tab, which will toggle between the current panel and the editor panel. Nice. Okay, here it is up here. Cool. All right. When I'm in the full screen editor at the bottom, I can see that there's something here. And currently I'm looking at automation for the different notes. I don't really want to look at automation. What I want to look at instead is expression, okay, the note expressions. So we see these icons here. This icon shows me automation. I'm going to toggle that off. And I'll hit this icon instead, which is going to show me note expressions. All right. Just to be clear, I don't have to be in this editor panel to do that. All right. If I'm looking in the Arranger Mix panel, I have the same options down here. Here's my note expressions, and then boom, I see those there. All right, so just don't want to confuse anybody. When the note expressions are here, I can see there's velocity, there's probability, there's timbre, pressure, and then gain and panning. All right. Some of these are bipolar, which means that, for instance, with panning, let's say I want to pan to the left or the right. If I'm starting in the center, then I need to either go to the left or right of that, which in this case would be either above or below the default value. All right. And some of these are not bipolar. For instance, pressure, either there's no pressure or there's more than no pressure. Okay. The point is all of these can be used on a per note basis so that as a note plays, it might sound a bit different. And this can be very, very useful. All right. In addition to that, we also have something known as operators. If you're coming from any sort of hardware from a company like Electron or something like that, you might be familiar with being able to have certain notes do specific things, either get re-triggered or only play every fourth time the pattern loops or something like that. You can use operators to do those things as well. So I want to use a combination of those features to make the clip a little bit more interesting. And as I'm thinking about it, it probably makes more sense to do it on this clip where I drew the notes in, because this one's a lot more simple. All right, so let's press play. All right, so a couple easy things that we could play around with. Obviously, velocity. I drew the notes in, so they're not different velocities. This would be a great thing to play with. Now, instead of just changing the velocities manually, which I could do, and let me swap back to my mouse. I'm going to press 1. There we go. Instead of changing the velocities manually, there's something I can do that's a lot more interesting to me. I'm going to select all the notes, Command A. And when I look in the inspector panel, I can see there's an area for velocity, and this is the overall velocity of the notes. But if I click here, this shows me a histogram. And I can use this to basically add variety to the velocities without manually adjusting all of them at once. So let me play the clip, and I'm going to introduce some chaos to the velocities here. All right, and we can see the velocities here have changed. I don't hear a huge difference with the tone of the instrument, but we'll address that a little bit later. I also have velocity spread. So let's say maybe instead of each note always being the same velocity every time it loops, I want there to be a range of possible velocities that it could hit every time the note gets played. Well, let's spread the velocities, and you'll see how spread works. This can be applied to a few different parameters too. So as I play it, just notice the velocity poles here. Now we'll get a different range of velocities. For this instrument, I can determine how velocity sensitive it is with this knob here. As I hover over the knobs, I see information at the bottom. So let's increase the velocity sensitivity. Okay, so that makes it a bit more obvious. Nice. Okay. Really quickly, let's talk about some of these operators so you have an idea of what's available. Let's say maybe I want some of these notes to repeat instead of just playing once. Maybe I want this to play twice in this span. If I look at the operators here, this second one here allows me to take a note and basically subdivide it. So if I change this from off, I'll click here and just drag up. And now that one note gets divided into two. It gets evenly subdivided. If I want to change this, I can, so that the division happens earlier or later. What I love about this personally is that you can see a line where the note gets divided and actually see how that lines up against the current beat grid. So let's just go ahead and divide a couple of these notes. And also add velocity here. Make it so the velocity is going to gradually drop. Do one more here. Do that too. And then, of course, if I want to, we can add some probability as well. So maybe let's make it so some of these aren't always going to play. And if I want to, I can either do this again manually by changing the different poles here when chance is selected, or I can use an operator. So let's just select all the notes and we'll just adjust the chance of all these at once. Anytime you see an arrow here, that means there's a histogram where you can do this using some chaos. So let's check this out. All right, so now we get a lot more variety going on there. It might be a bit too much though, so quite honestly, let's go ahead and adjust the probability back to 100% for all of these, but I do like the way that it's repeating. So utilizing operators can be a great way to add some more variety to the notes, and utilizing spread, especially for things like velocity, can be a great way to add even more character. Now, we're going to see a way that we can take advantage of things like velocity and timbre and pressure next.